Good afternoon. It's again a pleasure to be with you. It's not exactly the same public as this morning, but I will not repeat what I have said this morning. Okay? So the subject this afternoon is collective intelligence. The notion of collective intelligence in general, a theory of collective intelligence. This will be the first part of my talk, and the second part will be more practical. What are the everyday skills that we need to participate to collective intelligence, to grow collective intelligence, and particularly in the field of education. Okay, of course, because we are in SENAC. Oh, still does not work. I was trying to Okay, I'm going to do as if you see something. So, in this virtual slide, we speak about the notion of collective intelligence. Okay, collective intelligence is not something that has to be created. It already exists. And in fact, it already exists at the level of animal societies. We know that there are a collective intelligence in ant hills, in beehives, in mammal societies, in flocks of birds, you know, school of fishes. You know, all these animals are able to coordinate themselves. When one of them see, for example, a danger, they are able to communicate the danger to all the other animals and so on. They cooperate, they analyze their environment together, and they are able to solve problems together. We know, for example, that the bees are able to communicate to the hive where are the interesting fields of flowers and so on. So, collective intelligence is already there in nature. And because human beings are natural beings, are animals, social animals, we have naturally collective intelligence. But our collective intelligence is special. Why is it special? First, because we have language, okay, that animals don't have. It's very important to distinguish simple communication and language. With language, you are able to ask questions, to tell stories, to dialogue, all kind of things that animals cannot do. Okay? So we have language, we have complex technology, we have complex social institutions, political institutions, legal institutions, religions, economic interactions, and so on, that animals don't have. Okay. So, language, complex social institutions, technology. All these things makes our human collective intelligence more complex, more powerful than the collective intelligence of animal societies. Okay. We are on Earth, we are the best at collective intelligence. Okay, and that's why we as a species more or less dominates the biosphere. We dominate the biosphere. And let's say an anthill is collectively intelligent, but an individual ant is not intelligent. Okay. But this is not the case for us. We have a social collective or institutional communal collective intelligence, but we have also a personal intelligence, personal consciousness that other animals don't have, because we have language. Okay? And this is an enrichment of the human collective intelligence, because every member of the society has a personal consciousness, an internal representation of the functioning of the whole, and a personal representation of his or her role in the functioning of the whole. Okay. We don't act only with reflexes. We have reflection. Reflection is better than reflex. So you see the difference between the collective intelligence of insect societies and the collective intelligence of humanity. It's not the same thing. There is a continuity, but there is a big difference. Now, we can observe during the cultural evolution, the unfolding of human history, an augmentation of human collective intelligence. This augmentation, this evolution, is not a biological evolution. We have exactly the same genes and more or less the same brain than our prehistoric ancestors. It's the same animal. Okay. What is better is the technology to manage the symbols, technology to manage the language. For example, if we don't have any writing systems, our memory is limited to our personal biological memory. If we have writing systems, we can have a memory that is way bigger. For example, in libraries, okay, we can accumulate as many knowledge as we want. There is no quantitative limitation. And even more, you have qualitative improvements, okay, because you can have lists, you can have tables, you can have complex classification systems and so on that you cannot manage if you have no writing systems. So, with the invention of writing, with the invention of alphabet, with the invention of the printing press and so on, the development of media, the complexity also of symbolic systems, of codes, of mathematical tools, we have a better management of our collective memory, and we are more able to predict, to analyze, to synthesize, to coordinate ourselves, and so on. Okay. On a bigger scale, at the beginning of the history of the human race, we were able to coordinate at the scale of the tribe. Now we are able to coordinate at a much bigger scale. So, the idea, my idea, is to take advantage of the new algorithmic medium to augment, to continue this augmentation of human collective intelligence. But you have to understand that it is in the continuity of the cultural evolution. So it's not that, with the internet we have collective intelligence. No, we already have collective intelligence. The idea is to augment our collective intelligence, to make it better than the collective intelligence that we had at the time of the printing press. And you could say, but this is okay. Here, I'm not going to speak very long about this, just to give you a general historical perspective. It's the basic idea with these layers is that the kind of knowledge that we had at the beginning of the cultural evolution is not cancelled, there is no substitution, it is still there. And then there is improvement, complexification of the system. Okay, so it's one layer after another, but the first layers are still there. So oral knowledge, it's based on narratives, rituals, things like this. Then there is the invention of writing systems. This augments memory because the symbols are lasting. Then you have an invention of symbols that are lighter, like the alphabet or the use of paper. Then you have an automation of the reproduction and the diffusion of the symbols. Okay? And today we have automatic manipulation of the symbols. At each stage you have a new kind of knowledge that emerges, a kind of knowledge that is more powerful, that uses the kind of knowledge that was created before, but creates something new. And we are today at the stage, at the last stage, and what is to be expected is a kind of algorithmic knowledge. We are just at the beginning of this big leap forward in terms of civilization. It is something that has to be constructed, not something that we can observe today. We can just observe the very beginnings of this new kind of knowledge, but we are still not at it. Okay. I would like just to stress one thing, is that the scientific revolution of the natural sciences developed after the invention of the printing press. Okay, because we were able to accumulate quantitative data, where we were able to gather big libraries. We were able to build atlases, to publish scientific journals, etc. So there was a coordination of the scientific research that led to the scientific revolution. I think that what is ahead of us is the same kind of scientific revolution, but not in the natural sciences, but in the human sciences. Why? Because all the data concerning the functioning of the human society is today available and will be more and more available online, in digital form. And in addition, we have now the computing power to make use of all these data. So probably there will be a much more computable way to handle the knowledge of the humanities and the social sciences, and also better ways to coordinate the work of the researchers. So this is just to put this notion of collective intelligence in historical perspective. So you have understood that my research program, that is not only a research program, that is a kind of civilization program, is to augment human collective intelligence by taking advantage of the algorithmic medium. And you could say, but this is evident. It's not so evident because there are alternative programs. There are other programs that are not my program. For example, artificial intelligence. It's a completely different perspective. Artificial intelligence wants to create machines that are as intelligent as people or more intelligent than people. Okay, you see that it's not at all what I want to do. I want to make people more intelligent, not machines. It's not the same program. Or, for example, this notion of singularity. Maybe you have heard that in the United States they have created a singularity university that is financed by Google and other big companies. And the idea is to create a new species, a kind of cyborg, with a transformation of the genetic code of the human species and the construction of a different body. And maybe all this is heading toward a kind of immortality, technical immortality, and so, like, you know, science fiction thing. I don't agree with this. Okay, for me, the next step should be a cultural step. We should cross a cultural threshold, create a reflexive collective intelligence, not create a kind of immortal cyborg. And also, you can search on the web post-humanism. You'll see that there are a lot of literature on this. My perspective is humanist, not post-humanist. Okay? It's a continuation of the traditional humanism, centered on the development of the person and the development of the community. The idea is human development. It's not creating something different than the human species. So, the perspective is very simple, very clear, to augment the cognitive abilities, or to augment memory, okay, just by having access to the web and having the Google and Wikipedia and so on. You already have an augmented memory compared to what I could experience when I was a student. I have now an augmented memory. I have an extraordinary augmentation of my perception. Okay? I can watch webcams everywhere. I can see photographs of every part of the world. I can read newspapers from all the countries. Okay, I can listen to musics that were created in the 5 continents and so on, immediately. Okay, so my senses are augmented. Okay, I can use Skype and it is free. Okay, I can see the people. So it's all the cognitive processes that are augmented. And let's say the strategic point of my program is to not only to take advantage of all these augmentations of the cognitive processes, but I think that the most important is to augment the reflexivity, to be more aware of the way we think, of the way we communicate, of what we do together when we communicate. Okay, to have an image of it. And thanks to this image, to be able to improve ourselves. Okay, you know, when the dancers are practicing, they are always practicing in front of a mirror, okay, in order to see their defects. And it's also a continuation of the main strength of human intelligence, that is precisely consciousness, reflexivity, the ability to have a look on ourselves. So, this was the general idea. Now I would like to present to you a particular model of human collective intelligence. And ideally, in the future, we should be able to observe our collective cognitive processes in maps that would be organized like this. This kind of map, or this kind of grid, is mainly an organization of relations. Okay? Because you can easily notice that the notion of collective intelligence implies the notion of interdependence. Okay. So what is interesting in human collective intelligence is the interdependence of its different aspects. So we are going to look at three different kinds of interdependent relations. The interdependence between the virtual and the actual. Okay, so the interdependence between the rows, the interdependence between signs, beings, and things, and this is the interdependence between the columns of this matrix, and also there is an interdependence inside the 6 cells. Okay. Virtual, actual, it's relatively easy to understand. Actual is what is in the material world that has special temporal addresses. Okay, for example, this microphone is somewhere at a particular time. Okay, and virtual, it is what has no spatial temporal address. For example, the notion of justice, it exists. It is very important for us, but you cannot say where it is or when it is. Okay, but it exists. Okay. It is virtual. Okay. And it can be actualized by particular actions, of course, but in itself, it is virtual. So this is the difference between virtual and actual. Now, let's think about the difference between signs, beings, and things. This ternary dialectic is based on the semiotic triangle. When I say microphone, there is a sound that is going out of my mouth. Okay? This sound is a sign. It's the signifier. Okay? The thing is the microphone that is in my hand. It's the real thing, the referent. Okay? And the signified is the concept of microphone, the concept that is not the sign, because you have a different sign, for example, in French, in English, in Portuguese, or in Chinese. But the concept is exactly the same. And of course, so the sign and the concept is not the same thing. And the concept and the thing is not the same thing. You agree? Okay? So the concept is only in the mind, in the being. So this is the difference between sign, being, and thing. The sign is everything that is related to messages, to signs, to signifiers. Things, it's related to the reference, what are we speaking about, and being, it's the people, the mind. Okay. So now let's try to understand the internal relations here. Human development at the virtual level, it is knowledge corresponding to the sign, ethics corresponding to the being, and power or empowerment corresponding to the thing. Okay. Now, at the actual level, you have the messages corresponding to the sign, the people corresponding to the beings, and the thing, the equipments. Okay. So the important thing here is that you have an interdependence between the virtual and the actual part of human collective intelligence. And you have also an interdependence between the networks of signs, the networks of beings, and the networks of things. And this kind of interdependence is in fact fractal. You can always go deeper and deeper and analyze more complexity. For example, if I go into knowledge, I can make a difference between the sciences, the arts, and the wisdom. But of course, these three aspects are also interdependent. If I go into ethics, there is the real thing of ethics, the rights and the obligations, the being, the values, and the sign, the governance that shows the way. Okay, but there is an interdependence between these three things. If you go to the power, you need competences, you need finance, money, and you need resolve, courage, because if you don't believe in what you are doing nothing. Okay, and it's the same here in this general cell of sign actual. You have the content of the message, you have the relation between people, and you have the material part, the media. The people you can analyze in three parts. the social roles, the signs, the interior part, the trust, and the real thing, the social networks. And of course, you have an interaction between the three. And finally, you go there, technology, that is created with the help of science, the biophysical environment, the reality, and the what is related to people, the health. So when you take a step back and you look at the general interdependence of all these aspects, you see, okay, human collective intelligence is emerging from the interdependence of all these aspects, okay? And in a way, there is a kind of loop between collective intelligence and human development in its different aspects. So my idea is that in the future we should be able to draw maps of collective intelligence for every community, for example, for CENAC, or for São Paulo, or for Brazil, or for, I don't know, a network of researchers, and so on. Okay? And also to be able to see the contribution of different communities to this global interdependence. Okay? In order to pilot our development. Because how can you improve, how can you grow human development if you don't understand how it works and what are the relations between its different aspects? Okay, so my vision is the following. So this is the algorithmic medium, and it is organized in different layers. It's like the cultural evolution. Okay, it's okay. No, it's not too complicated. In order to understand the evolution of the algorithmic medium, I had to choose what is the, again, what is the strategic aspect, what makes the leap from one layer to the other. And I think that the leap is always something like an addressing system. Okay? The first stage, it's an addressing system of bits of information in a computer. And this is handled by the operating systems of the computers. Okay? Where are the bits, the 0 and the 1, in the hardware of the computer? Of course, you have to know exactly where they are. You need an addressing system. So this is the first layer. The second layer is the addressing of the computers in the network. Okay, the operator, the big operators of computing, the servers, the computers, and so on. So they all have an address in this general system that is the internet. The third layer was brought back by the invention of the World Wide Web, and you know that today it's the 25th anniversary of the invention of the web. So what is the web? Basically, it's a universal addressing system, not for the computers, but for the data. These are the URLs. You know, on your browser, there is something like www.http. This is the URL. Okay? So any kind of data can have an address in this system, and this is the web. And it is because it is a universal addressing system that we are able to create links from any piece of data to any other piece of data. Okay. And it was a huge improvement, of course. And I think that the next step will be a universal addressing of metadata, okay, of concepts that will help us to create automatically semantic relations between data. Between data that are, of course, categorized with this metadata system. And it is, I think, thanks to this next layer that we will be able to reach a stage of reflexive collective intelligence. Because the data that we are going to produce and to categorize will self-organize and represent themselves in the form of ecosystem of ideas. Okay, I'm not going into the technical details here, but this is what I think, and I work on this problem since more than 20 years, and I think that it can be solved. Okay, so now you more or less you understand my theory of collective intelligence. Okay? And by the same way, you understand why it is absurd to ask, yes, but what about collective stupidity or collective ignorance or things like this? Okay? No. Collective stupidity or collective ignorance is just temporary irritation that you have when you meet something that you don't like on Facebook. Okay? It is not a valid concept of humanities and social sciences. Okay. Now, I would like to speak in more practical terms, and even before having reached this stage of ideal reflexive collective intelligence, what can we do? And especially, what can we do in the field of education? And even to be even more specific, what kind of skills should we develop in our students? Okay, this is, as educators, this is our responsibility. Okay, to train them to participate to processes of collective intelligence. Even if they are not perfect, at least they would be able to contribute to the common good. So there are, I will give you now, in fact, a list of skills. Okay, the first skill is a skill of awareness. I call it, and I'm not the only one, network awareness. So, our students, and by the way, also we, the teachers, not all, if we are not able to do it, our students will not, okay? So, we should try to develop their skills of network awareness. I spoke this morning about the stigmergic communication. This means that we should understand that the communication is today in the online environment is made by the modification of the common memory. So we should have a representation of what is the common memory and how are we modifying it, and what are the other doing to modify it, and so on. Because the real issue, what is at stake, is the state of the common memory. Okay? This is the center of the communication environment. Also, when we interact online, we should be very aware of the fact that we are not alone. Because, of course, when I am in front of the screen of my computer or in front of my smartphone, I am alone in front of the smartphone. But in fact, at the other end of the network, there are a lot of people. And not only the people to whom I am speaking, okay? I am giving an example of communication to all the members of the community. And we should keep this in mind. And finally, okay, these are the three sins of network awareness. First sin, ignorance. Ignorance, this means people have already spoken about the subject, but I didn't read them. I don't know. I'm not interested to what other people are saying. Or redundance, I repeat what has already been said. Or, finally, I am speaking about something that is irrelevant for this particular community. So, we should take into account what the others are saying. We should be relevant, being inside the subject, and finally, not being redundant. So this is network awareness. Or it's, let's say, rules of, it's just a way to be polite, okay, online. Now I am speaking about the ethical part. We have to take responsibility for what we do online. Why? Because everything that we do is transforming the system of relations inside the common memory. Every time we create a link from, I don't know, our blog to the blog of someone else, we are transforming the system of relations. And because of this action, maybe some result will appear in a different way in the response of Google, for example. Every time we are buying a book on Amazon, we are also giving indications to other consumers, because we are giving an example of a link between having bought this book and having bought this other book. So there are algorithms that give recommendation based on what we have done. Okay. Or every time that we tag something, or every time that we create a hashtag on a tweet, okay, we are adding this tweet and the data that are related to this tweet to a particular list of discussion and so on. So every time that we like Okay, on Facebook, we are activating algorithms that will send this kind of information to other people. So, no, please, no flash. So everything that we do is modifying the environment. And you know, this responsibility goes with a kind of empowerment, because, okay, it's easy to say now everybody is an author because you can have a blog and write and send what you have written to the whole world and so on. But you are not only an author, you are also an editor, a publisher, a critic, a librarian, because you are organizing, tagging, and so on. So you have a broad array of new skills, of new powers, but also of responsibilities. And finally, I would say, the idea is that when you do something online, you do it for yourself, but in doing it, you are also organizing the environment for the others. Okay, now critical thinking, of course, it's very important because there are a lot of different sources, and you should be able to choose between these different sources or to evaluate them. Okay. The general principle is that there is no objectivity. Okay. You have always a particular agenda. You are trying to answer or to solve particular problems. You are always cutting a particular frame into the context to make the zoom. Here I am using a metaphor of photography, but it's the same for a text. It's a way to, it's a general way to organize information. What kind of context are you framing for your information? Okay, a historical context, philosophical context, political context, and so on. How do you organize your narrative? Everybody knows that the same fact can be explained or organized in very different ways. And finally, what are the norms that you are following? I mean, the definitions of what is good, what is bad, and in what context, and so on. And finally, you have to always cross-check the sources. Okay? For example, there is a big news that is arriving to you, you are on Twitter. Do you immediately retweet, or do you check the news from a lot of different sources? Of course, you have to check and not immediately retweet or share on Facebook and so on. So, critical thinking. And also, if there is no objectivity, there is something that has an absolute value, but it's not objectivity, it is transparency. Transparency, okay, I write something online. I should declare who I am. Okay, this is who. What is my profession? Where does the money come from? Is it an advertisement? Is it a political manipulation? Is it, okay, we should know what is the financial environment. Again, what are the problems? What are the questions? What is the agenda of this particular source? Are the references identified? Okay. Is there, how do you say it? When you know when you copy without quotation, what's the name of it? So, plagiarism. Okay. Is there plagiarism? Okay. So if if you don't know who is the author, if there is a lot of plagiarism, and if you don't know the professional environment and so on, it is not transparent. Okay, you know it. So it's very important to recognize what is transparent and what is not transparent. Now, I am going more directly into the learning skills. And I have 9 points. On this slide you have the first 5, and there will be 4 other points. Okay? So it is in particular order, but in fact it is a cycle. So you go through point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, and you go back to the first. Okay? It's a learning cycle. The first thing is attention management. You should define your interests. What is important for you? What is your aim? What are your goals? What are your learning goals? Okay? Because you cannot learn everything at the same time. It's impossible. Okay? So you have to think about it, and even to write it. Don't be narrow-minded, of course. You should keep open-minded. You should keep in mind the big picture, but it's important to determine priorities in your learning. Then, using what I have said before, you should connect to valuable sources. When I say sources, I don't say platforms, okay? Twitter is not a source. Facebook is not a source. A source is someone, one person, or one institution, or one laboratory, I don't know, but this is a source, okay? Then, when you have chosen the valuable source, you should gather the information from the different sources in one place and filter. Okay? Filtering is very important because you cannot use everything, and you have always to choose. This is important, this is not, this is important, this is not. So filtering, you have ways to filter manually, but you have also online, for people who are interested, I can speak about it in private. You have ways to filter automatically. Just to tell you, I have different lists on Twitter, and there is a service that is called Tweet Times. You can use this service. You can apply it to every one of your Twitter lists, and it automatically extracts what is the most relevant. So you are not obliged to go through every item. The fifth step is categorization. Again, it's something very important because you don't have a real useful memory if it is not organized, if it is not categorized. Okay? It's the organization of your memory, the categorization. And not only of your memory, but also of you organize the memory of the others, because you share what the collection of data that you have gathered. And then, once you have established your priorities, once you have connected to valuable sources, you have gathered all the data streams, you have filtered, you have categorized, and finally you can record. Okay? It's not just, oh, I find this, I record it. No, it's the result of a conscious, organized methodology. You record for long-term memory. And this has a name, it's called data curation. You know, the word curator is borrowed from the world of art. The curators are the people who organize exhibitions in museums. So they choose what will be the theme of the exhibition, and they choose the different artists, and they choose the way that the pictures are going to be disposed in the space, and so on. This is the work of the curator. So here, we are in the position of curators because we are not the authors of the data, but we create a collection that is relevant, not relevant in general, but relevant in regard of particular goals, in regard of particular priorities. And this is going after a careful selection of sources and so on. There is a work before the curation. Okay? I would like to give you an example. This activity is considered today to be very important. I would like to show you my one example of my own curation. It's all in Portuguese. Yes. So, okay, you see that there is one part of my blog that is called curation. Okay? You see? Curation. So the image, you can see the image of the filter. Okay? And these are the themes of my curation. There is one about my own research, one about big data, one about algorithms, one about knowledge management. So you can see the different themes. Let's say there is one on education and cultural change. Very long. Okay. So it is a platform that is specialized in curation. Okay, it's called Scoopit. It's not the only one. You have a lot of platforms. What is important is not the platform, it's the cognitive activity. So people have asked me in advance the question, what are the best use of technology for education? Okay? So this is a whole field, in fact. And here is my curation on this subject. So here you have the reference to different papers, reports, websites. See, for example, how to integrate technology in education, introduction to distance education theories, guidebook for social media in the classroom, comparison of 5 free MOOC platforms for educators, interactive virtual reality for learning. What content curation, chunking, information, and microlearning have in common? The new data science of learning, making online, and so on and so on. Okay. And this is one page. There are a lot of it. Here you have George Siemens is one of the best contemporary theorists about connected connectionist education. It's a new theory. Okay. So this is one example. So what I am practicing what I am explaining to you. Okay, so as I spend some time to select some people that are specialized in certain subjects on Twitter, I follow them, I put them in different lists by subjects. I follow also people on this platform that is called Scoopit, and you can create your own page on a particular subject, you can follow people and so on. So it's a whole activity, but by doing this, I am doing a watch, and I am completely immersed in the contemporary conversation about the subject that I am interested in. Okay? And everybody can do this. It's just, it takes some time, but you acquire some skill and you can do it faster and faster. And it becomes easier and easier to detect what is relevant and what is not, what is knowledge and what is marketing, okay? Because generally that's the point. Okay. So I just wanted to show you what I am doing. Okay, so you do your data curation, and then every week, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, you try to do some synthesis of what you have learned in doing this process of selection, curation, and so on. And for example, you create a blog post or you augment a page on a wiki. You have several ways to do this, and you share what you have created. You share it on social media. Okay? It's posting on your blog is already sharing, but you should post it also on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. You have a lot of different social media. And eventually you receive feedback. There is a conversation about what you have done. Okay? And once you have engaged in a creative dialogue, you can reflect again on your priorities and do the cycle again. This is what I call personal knowledge management. You need, let's say, a teacher to show you how to do this. But once you know how to do this, you don't need any teacher. You learn by the participation to an online conversation. Okay? But you have to be active. If you're not active, you don't learn. If you don't participate in conversation actively, with critical thinking and so on, you don't learn. Okay? But by doing it, you learn personally, and in addition, you help other people to learn. Okay? Because other people can read what I have gathered in my data curation. They can read my blog post, they can, and so on. Okay? So that's the way to combine personal learning online and collective learning. And now I come to my, and again I want to stress, this is not a question of platform. I'm not saying that you have to use this platform or this other platform. What I am speaking about is cognitive activities. Okay? It's independent from the platform. The platform will evolve, okay? But you will always be obliged to choose your priorities. You will always be obliged to select between different sources. You will always be obliged to filter. Okay? So it's the cognitive activity that is important. And finally, I arrive to my last slide. That is the social knowledge management. You cannot have social knowledge management without personal knowledge management, okay? It's evident, because everything is based on the individual. Okay? You have no society without participants. So, here you have these circles are the individuals, the peers, okay? All the peers are communicating together. They are engaged in a dialogue. They are engaged in a social network, whatever the platform. We don't care. Okay? Ideally, all these people have a common field, a common practice, a particular, I don't know, particular profession, a particular discipline, and so on. They have an experience, they have a knowledge, because they participate to this field, and they try to transform their tacit or implicit knowledge of this field into an explicit knowledge of the field. So we start from something that is implicit, that is incorporated into our habits, into our experience, and we try to formalize it, to explicit this knowledge in order to share it. Okay? So we transform the tacit into explicit. So inevitably, online, it takes the form of data and metadata and evaluation. Okay. And it's, you see, at the center. This is what reunites all the people. Okay. So you have the data, you have the algorithm. In fact, it's the algorithms of the platform to which the people participate. And you have these three movements, these three dialectic. First, a transformation of implicit into explicit. Then a transformation from explicit into implicit, because you can learn from what is explained and what is exposed and shared in the social media, and you should incorporate it into your practice. So this is the transformation from explicit to implicit knowledge. And these two movements, from explicit to implicit and from implicit to explicit, are synergized by the socialization and the conversation between the members of the social network. But all this assumes that the individual members of this process of social knowledge management are practicing seriously personal knowledge management, of course. Okay. But if they do, here you have a real process of collective learning or collective intelligence. So that's it. This is my what I can describe. It's taken from my personal experience, because I spent 20 years of experimentation online and participation in diverse social networks, and also I try to practice this with my students, of course. Okay? I try to teach them to do curation. I try to teach them to do relevant communication in social networks and things like this. It's not easy, but it's something that we should learn, and it will be more and more important, not only in the institutional context of education, but also and above all at work. Thank you.
Bem, senhoras e senhores, abriremos agora um espaço para perguntas. Por gentileza, quem desejar, sinalize com as mãos. E uma de nossas recepcionistas levará o microfone. Lembramos também que estamos recebendo perguntas pelo Twitter e Facebook do Senac São Paulo. Lembrando, a tag do Twitter é #PLeviSenac. A primeira pergunta, eu tenho duas aqui já da internet. Vou fazer a primeira, que vem do Twitter, de Máquina Criadora. Is there any universal meta-language initiative?
So, thank you for this question. No, in fact, it's yes. Okay, so on my blog also you have a description of my research that is precisely about this information economy meta-language. And you'll find a lot of documentation here by clicking on the links. You have even the grammar of this language. It is in French for the moment, and I have a working version in English. If you are interested, I can send it to you. And in 1 or 2 months, there will be the definitive version. Not definitive, the first version of the dictionary. So it's an ongoing research. I'm doing this research, as I told you, since 20 years. It's very complex because it implies not only the computability of the syntax of the language, but also the computability of the semantics of the language. This means that if you write a text in this language, there are algorithms that create automatically all the semantic relations between the words and between the propositions inside the text, and also all the semantic relations between this text and the other texts of the same language. Okay? And of course, when you categorize the data with this meta-language, you have automatically the semantic relations between the data. That's the point.
Professor, the second question came from Talvasi Chaves via Twitter. Who will be the educators of this digital literacy?
Okay, there is in fact, there is no official credits for this, okay? Or you know, or you don't know, and you know because you practice it. So everybody that has a good practice of all the cognitive operation, social and cognitive operations that I have explained to you would be able to explain it to others. Okay? It's a practice mainly. And I'm sure that some students are abler to do it than some professors. Okay?
Estamos abrindo então para a plateia, onde temos uma pergunta, por favor.
Perguntou se eu queria levantar, eu prefiro não. Eu sou historiador, sou do Rio de Janeiro, e ele não está com o negócio traduzindo para ele?
Pode falar que nós vamos fazer a whispering aqui.
É porque o inglês fica ruim. Eu pesquiso a formação humanista no meu doutorado entre estudantes que produzem tecnologia oftálmica na Unifesp. E eu estou usando alguns livros seus na minha pesquisa, e eu gosto muito do conceito de cultura, quando você fala que a cultura ela é um produto, a tecnologia é um produto cultural, não existe um impacto da tecnologia na cultura. E a minha pergunta é como que, partindo do conceito da inteligência coletiva na web, assim, uma coisa bem tecnológica, a formação humanista dentro do ideal que vem do romantismo alemão, por exemplo, ela pode ser pensada juntando esses valores formativos, assim, entendeu? Da formação integral humanista, sensibilidade, ética, principalmente nos ideais de Kant, Friedrich Schiller, por exemplo. Assim. Não sei se deu para traduzir para ele.
He must translate everything now.
Eu vou pedir um favor. Tem como você fazer a pergunta assim bem específica e objetiva? Porque aí nós conseguimos ficar no foco da pergunta.
Se é possível associar os ideais da formação humanista do romantismo alemão nesse nosso paradigma cultural tecnológico hoje em dia, para quem produz tecnologia.
Okay, everything that I have explained today is much more related to humanities and social sciences, to culture in general, than to technology per se. I'm just speaking about the use of technology, but it's the use of technology for humanistic goals and in a humanistic context. Okay, I'm not speaking about programming or electronics or things like this. I'm speaking about a cultural perspective, civilization perspective, civilization of reflexive collective intelligence, and also I was speaking about the new cultural skills, the new critical thinking, and all this is much more in the humanistic domain than in engineering per se.
Ok, próxima pergunta, por favor. Aqui, sim.
Professor Levy, I am Fabio Gender, the Chief Scientist in IBM. I've been following you in the last many times you came to Brazil. And my question is to the honorable scholar that you have transformed, like this. As you know, the Brazilian Academy was inspired in the French model. However, we've been through a strong influence of the American model. So instead of having now an academic context where we can count on superb reflections as the one you just made, as an education philosopher, we now are being pushed towards a more strict production university, the university to create students to produce things and so on. Now, in this scenario, in your opinion, what's the best thing to do in light of this kind of apparent conflict? I consider you one of the privileged people in the planet because you've been educated in French, but now you work in Canada. Okay? And by the way, Brazil is one of the few places in the planet where you can express your opinion without any concern.
You are perfectly right. But I am mainly privileged because I can speak to you here in this very friendly environment in Brazil. This is my biggest privilege. What you said about the push for just production and so on, I'm not sure, because people are very aware that we are entering into a knowledge society, a knowledge economy, and that in this new knowledge economy, innovation, critical thinking, free thinking is very important. And we are not anymore in the industrial era where we wanted to produce, workers that are doing the same thing at the same time and in a very mechanical way. This is finished. It's the old times. Okay. I think that we live in interesting times because there is no clear trend that is emerging. If you ask to the responsible worldwide, to people that are responsible of the higher education, they will all say that the situation is not very clear, they don't know what to do, they're not sure what the future will be, okay? So I think that the kind of perspective that I am trying to show you, if it is really practiced, can have a chance of success. I'm not sure that it will happen, but I'm sure that if I am not pushing for it, it will never happen.
Thank you, sir.
Bem, senhoras e senhores, temos espaço para uma última pergunta. Há mais alguma pergunta?
Professor, em educação à distância, a gente tem uma coisa chamada objetos de aprendizagem, que eu vi que o senhor, inclusive, usa um dos autores, e uma das questões importantes é a granularidade. Como a gente pode estar desmistificando ou partindo uma informação, um dado, né? E como é que o senhor vê essa questão ao construir a inteligência coletiva, a questão da granularidade da informação?
Okay. That's exactly what I was trying to explain to you, how to build collective intelligence. Okay. I think there are two main, so I'm going to conclude here. There are two main aspects. The first one is to have a general view of cultural evolution and of the character, the very innovative and very new aspects of this algorithmic medium and of all the opportunities that it is opening to us. Okay? What I think is that the right direction, the strategic direction, is the direction of reflexive collective intelligence, and that we should take all the possible technical means to reach this stage. Okay, this is one aspect. Now, the other aspect, that is more bottom-up, if you want, is to acquire and to disseminate the right skills to participate to collective intelligence processes in the digital networks. Okay? So to acquire critical thinking, the ability to prioritize one's learning, the ability to curate data, the ability to synthesize for others, and finally the ability to participate to knowledge, to social knowledge management processes. So there is a general vision to understand, and there is also a particular skills and practical knowledge to acquire. Okay, so there is, if you want, a theoretical aspect and a practical aspect, and we should be good at both. I cannot tell you when it will arrive or what exactly will happen, I don't know. Okay? All that I can do is to speak, to discuss, to write books, and to have friends around the planet.
Professor? Did it finish already? Yes, all right. Bem, senhoras e senhores, então tivemos a última pergunta agora. Agradecemos ao professor Pierre Lévy, que muito nos honrou com a sua presença, e na certeza de que esse encontro abre caminhos para reflexões posteriores, encerramos o evento. Lembramos que ao sair, por gentileza, deixem os fones de tradução simultânea e não esqueçam seus documentos. Muito obrigado, professor Pierre Lévy. Obrigado pela presença de todos e uma boa tarde. Até breve.